It is a beautiful Friday night, and we are lucky enough that somehow the puppy is not full. I thought this bad boy was going to fill the second that it opened up, but it's been live for, I want to say, about a week. 137,000 entrants in it so far. So let's go ahead. Let's get in, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, 6 spots open in this draft room if anybody else wants to hop in with us. But thank you, everybody, for coming out. I thought we were going to get into Best Ball Mania. I asked you all this before we started the live stream, but it looked like the vast majority of the people wanted a puppy draft instead. So we are here. We will get into Best Ball Mania possibly after this draft. But thank you, everybody, for coming out. Appreciate you. Hope you had a great night last night. Sorry that I wasn't able to live stream. Was in Dallas, ladies and gentlemen. But now we back in Austin. And we back in the, I don't know what we want to call this place. We back in the nest. We'll call it the nest. Call it the nest. But Aleem says, how do I play on Underdog Fantasy? George has the right answer. Click on the top of the link at the live chat, my friend. You can hop in a draft with us. Thank you for coming. Torsten says, how would you adjust your roster construction to BBM would have 20 rounds instead of 18? I would take a third quarterback in pretty much every draft. Take a third quarterback in the vast majority of drafts. Probably take a third tight end in a lot of them as well. We got Kittamore out here, pick 11 with us. Sebastian says 5 overall. Looks like it's an easy Bijan. We'll see, my friend. DeCannon says we will possibly be running 2. If you want 2 drafts, hit that like button. But happy to see you, cheap guy. Payne FX says Dallas, the real city of Texas. We them boys. I know this is gonna. I probably shouldn't say it. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not like Dallas. In comparison to Austin, and of course I'm very biased. I went to school in Austin. I live in Austin. I like Austin a lot more than Dallas for sure. But we have Lamb going up 1. Not too much of a surprise. I think that Kale Elliott is in here with us. Chase goes. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Justin Jefferson at 5. Previous to the Jordan Addison news, it did seem like it was very much up in the air if you're going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown or Justin Jefferson. Since you had the Jordan Addison news, it does feel like people are a little more inclined to just take Jefferson as a locked and loaded guy over St. Brown. But regardless, I'm kind of fine with either or. Now, Corey says, been watching your videos for 2 years and just now loaded up a draft on my way home from drinks with the family and got in at 7 with you. Hell yes, my guy. Happy to go against you. We got Louis out here at pick 6. Well, I'll be watching. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now, Gibbs goes at 10. I have noticed a surprising trend where it does seem like Jahmyr Gibbs has been falling as of late in these drafts. Like, there have been a decent amount of these draft rooms that I've actually gotten Jahmyr Gibbs at like pick 14, 15, 16, which I'll take him there every single time. And JRV here at pick 12 goes ahead, takes Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. 12, 13. George says Vikings are redshirting McCarthy. I would bet McCarthy for sure plays this year. I mean, if you look at this situation going into the season, I think it's like the perfect example of the veteran is going to start. He'll probably get anywhere from 4 to 8 games. And the second that they can no longer I don't know. The second they can no longer justify having Darnold in there, and the Vikings are sitting at 3 and 5, and Darnold looks like absolute garbage, you kind of have to pivot over to McCarthy, whether or not he's good to go. Okay. Okay. Benji says, where do you think Aiyuk lands? I think more likely than not, Aiyuk is going to be a Niner this next season. Now, of course, with that being said, if he were to go somewhere else, I think Aiyuk is probably going to be going over to Washington. Okay. Smith goes 25. Louis says 100% you're about to snipe Kyron. Yeah, when we go wide receiver at the gate, you know more likely than not, I'm going to be looking at Kyron Williams at 29. Well, we'll see if he makes it to us. If he doesn't, we'll probably go Kupp instead. Yeah, Kyron does go 28, so instead we're going to go ahead. We will take Cooper Kupp. Brian says, why Nico Collins if he is going to be the wide receiver 3? If you actually are a YouTube member or if you are a member of flockfantasy.com, you can watch an hour-long podcast I made with Bush. And I made one with Danny as well. But the one I made with Danny, we went through and we talked about Nico Collins a bunch. And I mean, initially at the beginning of the offseason, I actually had Stephon Diggs ranked ahead of Nico Collins. And then as I was going through and writing my draft guide, to see Nico Collins' yards per route run, to see the intended, to look at all the advanced analytics that you had from Nico Collins last season, Nico Collins and his advanced analytics were up there with Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. Do I think he is that talented a receiver? Hell no. I don't think that Nico Collins is a Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb level talent. I think that a lot of it was based off just the fact that it was a great situation with not a lot of target competition last year in Houston and elite level quarterback play. But nonetheless, you still have the elite level quarterback play going into this next year, and you do have Stephon Diggs added in, but I don't know. And Nico, I have a hard time just because he's a receiver that kind of came from nowhere. Like if you looked at his first 2 years in the NFL, he was extremely inefficient. It's not like he was a super high pedigree player coming out of Michigan. But for how good he was last season, I think you have to go Nico wide receiver 1 in this offense. I'm fine with Stephon Diggs with where he's going as a low-end wide receiver 2. But you do have a lot of upside in Houston. For sure, one of these Houston receivers is going to be a bum and disappoint, right? And when I say a bum, if Tank Dell's wide receiver 40 or wide receiver 36, for you to take him in the 3rd round, that's equivalent to a bum, right? Like you're very disappointed with that pick. But at the same time, I think one of these Houston receivers can be a very, very strong selection. And it's going to be difficult to figure out who is who. We'll go ahead. We'll take Pickens at 44. Pickens has an ADP of 39. It's understandable to see George Pickens fall because this is one of the potential landing spots that you have for Aiyuk. And obviously, if Aiyuk were to go over to Pittsburgh, Pickens should fall a ton. Red says Brian Thomas or Ladd. I think as a prospect, I would way rather have Brian Thomas. For the situation, I think Ladd is in a much better spot. So from a dynasty perspective, where I'm not necessarily just thinking about situation and instead we're thinking about long-term outlook, I would rather go with the player that I like more as a prospect. So from a dynasty perspective, I'm for sure going to go Brian Thomas. From a redraft perspective, it's going to be way, way tougher. I think Herbert is easier to get at his cost later on, so I almost want to go Ladd, but I think it is up to you in redraft. Dynasty, for sure, go Brian Thomas. But because Ladd is such a good situation for redraft this season, if you want to set yourself up, especially with a Herbert pick later on, I think you can go Ladd. Okay. So let's move this over. We will go ahead. I was planning on going Josh Jacobs here, but we actually get Mahomes falling to us. So the nice thing about having Mahomes fall to us on this build is there is that outside chance that we actually get one of Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice making it to us at 68. And then by the time we get to round 7, we can pivot over to running back, and we'll have a ton of running backs that are very interesting. But real quick, I probably should have said this at the top, just in case you don't know what's happening here. We are drafting on Underdog Fantasy. That's where I've drafted pretty much every single day for years and years and years. It's by far and away my favorite place to draft. It's best ball, so there's no time commitment at all during the season. It's how I draft teams every year. It's how I won $150,000 on Underdog 2 years ago. And of course, if you wanted to join a draft with us, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. If you sign up with code FLOCK, you would get my 2024 fantasy football rankings. If you use code FLOCK, you will get my 2024 fantasy football draft guide. You will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250 as well. But you do need to be in one of these states if you want to draft on Underdog. That's the bad news. You need to be in one of these states. The good news is it is pretty much every single state. You can see the map there if you were interested in getting in with me. But let's go ahead. Jeep Guy says, was a solid podcast. Thank you, my guy. I appreciate it. Let's see. Henry says, that happened to me last night. I had Kelsey in the mid-4th and got Mahomes sniped one pick in front of me. I'm sorry, but if I get Mahomes in round 5, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. It is a simple rule that I've had for years now, and it will probably be a simple rule that I have for years to come. Even if we have an unstacked Patrick Mahomes here at 68, even if we don't get Rashee Rice making into us, I'm chilling. I'm fine. Mahomes quarterback that you can see in his offense for the Chiefs. 12 skill positional guys touch the ball any given week. I've won $100,000 plus with an unstacked Mahomes. So obviously, we are really wanting to get Rashee Rice here at 68. When it doesn't happen, no harm, no foul. We're going to go ahead. We will pivot over to George Kittle. And we are ready to slam some running backs here in rounds 7 through 11, where the running back values are extremely strong. Bean Salad says, Mason, I've watched a ton of those videos. My guy, hope you like them. I think that they're really funny. I actually showed my girlfriend one of them. We listened to one on the way back from Dallas today. She thought it was funny as well. I really like it. What I've been doing lately is I've been listening to those videos. I'll hop on the Stairmaster, fire up some Underdog drafts on my phone, listen to those videos like as podcasts in the background. And yeah, it makes the time go by real fast. Ricardo says, 12-team, 2-2-1 redraft, half PPR. Do you prefer Bijan over Amon-Ra St. Brown or Chase at the 5th spot? Second round receivers that come back are kind of suck. What strategy would you go with through the first 3 rounds? If it's going to be a half PPR redraft league where at the very most you can only start 3 wide receivers, I am honestly completely fine going RB out the gate. If you could go Bijan Taylor, if you could go Bijan Barkley, Bijan Gibbs, I think that would be a very interesting spot for you to just lock and load 2 anchor running backs out the gate, and then you should be able to pivot over and find strong wide receiver values where right now I'm kind of seeing like in ESPN leagues, you get like Zay Flowers in round 6. You get Jordan Addison around like 9. So honestly, I would probably try to go like Bijan Taylor, Bijan Barkley out the gate. Even Bijan Kyron I'd be fine with. If I could grab an elite tight end like Laporta in round 3 and then just hammer in middle round wide receivers, I think that'd be very advantageous in a redraft league where you can only start up to 3 receivers maximum. And it's a half PPR format. Obviously, Underdog's going to be different where just the middle round wide receivers aren't going to be nearly as appealing. Where instead of getting Zay Flowers in round 6, you have to take Zay Flowers at the 3-4 turn. Okay. Now, our fitness, happy to see my guys, has got Puka's my round 16 keeper. Are we going to go running back or wide receiver round 1? Obviously, it's going to be very different depending on the keepers that are being kept. I know that maybe sounds dumb, but if in your league, CMC, Bijan, Breece, Gibbs, Taylor, Barkley, HN, Kyron, if all those guys are kept and your best option to go with a running back in round 1's Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, versus your best option at wide receiver, maybe being, I don't know, Garrett Wilson. I probably go Garrett Wilson in that instance. It's very difficult to know unless we can see the actual players that are being kept themselves. I will always default, though, if you can only start 2 wide receivers in 1 flex, you are heavily incentivized to punt on wide receiver and just build around them in the middle rounds. Okay. So let's move this over. Like we said, once we punt running back through the first 6 rounds, we are primarily going to be looking running back from here on out, which good for us. I really like the running backs around 7, 8, 9. So I'm not sitting here crying like, oh my gosh, we need running back. No, we're going to be just fine. We'll go ahead. We'll take Jalen Warren. We already have George Pickens on this team, so we can go through and we can say, oh, okay, well, maybe this is a season where Russ saves Pittsburgh. Maybe, hopefully, probably not. But, I mean, at a reasonable price, we're going to get Pickens as a wide receiver 4. and Jalen Warren in round 8. I'm down to find out. Okay. Torsten says, what if Best Ball Mania had a second flex spot in 20 rounds instead of 18? Would he still go 3, 6, 8, 3 roster construction? No, if it was 20 rounds and you had 2 flex spots, so you could start up to 5 wide receivers, I'd actually be more likely to only take 2 quarterbacks, even if it's 20 rounds. I would definitely, if it has 2 flex spots, grab an extra running back, grab an extra wide receiver. So Lockett goes 96. For us, it's pretty good to see the wide receivers go, right? When we go with wide receiver through the first 4 rounds, it's not like we're sitting here setting up prayers that we can find wide receivers still in this draft. I mean, we should be somewhat fine. If we're looking at potential quarterback stacks that we could have coming up, Dak Prescott doesn't really do much for us. I mean, we could go Dak and then Brandon Cooks on the way back round, but we're more so looking at running back on the way back round anyway. Jordan Love, maybe we go with Dontavian Wicks later, but we're not really looking at wide receiver anyway. So here at this pick, what I may end up doing is we may end up taking Brock Bowers, pairing up Bowers with George Kittle. Obviously, we wouldn't do this in best ball, but if you actually look at our tight end draft strategy video and what we looked at over the past 4 years is on Underdog, it has been advantageous if you can find one of these tight ends that does give you some pretty big spike weeks there in the first 5, 6 rounds, such as George Kittle, and then followed up with like a Brock Bowers pick before round 11 and only take 2, you actually can get a pretty high ceiling at the tight end position, specifically in the fantasy football playoff tournament. So we'll go ahead. We will take Bowers at 101. We're for sure not going to take another tight end through the rest of this draft. And we could have pivoted over to running back. I just think that the running backs that we're going to have available to us in round 10 are very similar to the running backs that we'd have available to us in round 9 here, and Brian Robinson, Devin Singletary. Megabub says, love a late round Russell Wilson combo. I mean, Russ can definitely be a second quarterback that we take here. So one thing that I want to be considering is when we have these 2 tight ends in round 6 and 9, and we're for sure only going to take 2 tight ends. We took Mahomes at pick 53. I think we can get away with the 3 quarterback build, but if we are going to go 3 QBs, it means we're not going to take another quarterback for a very long time. If we were to take another quarterback, we're probably not going to take our next quarterback till round 17. So maybe this is a spot where we want to go ahead and we want to target Russell Wilson around 18 as a 3rd QB based off the Pittsburgh little mini stack that we have set up. Maybe if you have Shaheed making it to us at 116, we go Shaheed and then set ourselves up with a Derek Carr pick in round 17 or Russell Wilson pick in 18. And then we have Derek Carr double stacked with Kamara and Shaheed and Russell Wilson double stacked with Jalen Warren and George Pickens. So we do have a couple different options here. Let's see what Louis decides to do. And okay, cool. It looks like all the pictures are updated. We're going to go and take Tajay Spears here, running back 3. Shaheed's definitely interesting as he falls for the potential that we talked about with the New Orleans double stack. But mainly, we still need running back. We get some pretty strong value on Spears. I think Spears is a running back that will have a role from a week-to-week perspective. Obviously, you have more so upside if you were to get an injury to Pollard. I assumed you were talking about Roman Wilson. My guy, sorry about that. 2K Goat says, please check my next message for my question. Thanks. I will see if we can find it, my friend, but I'm going to let you know there's no guarantee on that front. But I do love the profile pic. I used to really like Logic whenever I was in high school, whenever he had what were the 2 big Logic albums? The Incredible True Story I really liked, which is this profile pic. And what was the one before? The one before was when I really liked Logic, when he had the Nicki song. Logic. Under Pressure. I loved Under Pressure. And then he came out with pretty much any album after The Incredible True Story, I did not like. And I just like less and less and less as he put out new music. But I went back and actually re-listened to some of the old stuff that I used to like. And I thought it held up very well. Like I still really enjoyed it. We're going to go ahead. We will take Chase Brown here at 125. Not a super big Chase Brown guy, but there should be a ton of points scored in Cincinnati. And I'm not a big Zach Moss guy either. So if there are a zillion points scored in Cincy, So one of these running backs is probably going to have to score some touchdowns, so they're both very reasonably priced, with Chase Brown going to pick 125 and Zach Moss going to pick 97. So even if I don't love them from a talent perspective, you still kind of have to mix them in. Okay. So 2K just wants an opinion on a team. You have Kyron, Breece, Watt. Oh, this is a phenomenal squad, especially on the bench. What I like about the bench is we're primarily just rostering high upside guys like Zach Moss. And on a shallow redraft league on my bench, I'm not really wanting to roster wide receivers that look like Mike Williams, Jerry Jeudy. Feels like a waste of a roster spot. It's cool, you roster Mike Williams, you roster Jerry Jeudy. If he comes out and he's the wide receiver 27 on the season, I get an underdog draft. That's great, right? You draft Jerry Jeudy and he's the wide receiver 27 this season. I'm super pumped about getting that production with where he goes. But if you do that in your regular ESPN draft, then it doesn't really matter. You can always get that off the waiver wire. So I'd way rather use those roster spots down on the bench at running back, just in case one of those guys pops off, because obviously there's a wider range of outcomes with those running backs in impacting your team than you'd see with the receivers, because running back's so much more dictated just by opportunity. Okay. Charbonnet goes, we will take Gabe Davis. We still need to have some wide receivers, right? Just because we have Jefferson, Nico, Kupp, Pickens, it doesn't mean we're completely done at receiver. Davis, it doesn't give us a potential stack later on. You already had Lawrence go previously. But I don't know. I think that there will be some running backs that come back around that were similar to Dowdle, where I do think that you will see the drop-off once you have no Gabe Davis available. I mean, you can make an argument that Dotson is appealing here as well based on what you saw as a rookie. But my thing with Dotson is it's already kind of a stretch at this price considering how bad he looked a year ago. And now that you have the possibility of Aiyuk coming over, I think I'm going to need a discounted Dotson if I'm going to take him. Or obviously if we took Jaden Daniels previously, then that's a spot I'm happy to take him. But it looks like slowly but surely these profile picks are being updated with some of these guys. Some of them are still the same. But Josh Jacobs had his profile pick updated on Underdog. Who else? Malik Neighbors has a profile pick. But then you see still Blake Corum doesn't. Rome doesn't. I love seeing the new picks. Here you can see the new Josh Jacobs one, which we'll need to monitor this and figure out what we're doing on fantasy.com with them. I guess we're going to go ahead and take Darnell Mooney. Burton, I'm not super interested in now that you have T. Higgins looking like he is going to be a Cincinnati Bengal this next season. I'm fine drafting Burton. Obviously, we drafted Tyler Boyd in the past. It's not like Tyler Boyd was going outside the first 18 rounds. Boyd was draftable. But also, it's not a guarantee that Burton's as talented a receiver as Boyd. And I do think you're going to see his ADP drop as the summer progresses. I think Burton is probably going to end up with an ADP of around 15 by the time we get to late August. And I'd rather just draft him there. I think if you're going to be drafting him here at 151, there's not much room for upside now that Higgins is locked in. Now, of course, if Higgins were to be dealt, then Burton jumps Mooney, Thielen, Leggett, Dotson, Davis, Downs, Polk, Sticky Ricky, A.D. Mitchell, Mike Williams. He's probably up near Shaheed, Judy, Shakir, just because how good the Cincy offense is. But at least based off what I read, it sounds like Higgins is locked and loaded. Okay. Lee says, shouldn't CMC be consensus 1 if Aiyuk leaves? If Debo were to leave, and maybe I'm irrational with this, but just looking at the average depth of target for these receivers, if Debo were to leave, I would be even more excited about McCaffrey. If you look at the underdog pick'ems of McCaffrey right now, I have this permanently loaded up here just because it's the craziest thing ever. If I was going to look at these right now, I would be going with the lowers. I'd be going with possibly lower 5.5 receiving touchdowns. just because it doesn't really feel like it's priced in here that he is a 28-year-old running back and you do have potential injury risk. But if you were to have like Deebo Samuel gone, I think those projections would rise. Tomato. We're going to take Quinton Johnston here, pick 164. I've made video after video talking about why Quinton Johnston is more likely than not a bum. But at the same time, if we're going to take him at like wide receiver 73, if he's wide receiver 30, it's a profitable pick. So in your regular redraft league, you have no business taking Quinton Johnston. In your dynasty league, you have no business taking Quinton Johnston. But here on Underdog, I'm fine with it. I've actually drafted an embarrassing amount of them, which I don't want to admit. But anyway, now we will be pivoting over to running back and quarterback through the rest of this draft. We're probably going to be drafting 2 more running backs and then 2 more quarterbacks. Probably be a 3, 6, 7, 2 builds. Right? 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, we have 4 more picks. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. Okay. I forgot what we're saying. Oh, yeah, but if Aiyuk leaves San Francisco, personally, I don't think I'm bumping up CMC much. I think no Deebo would be a big deal. But I have noticed Jalen Wright falling a decent amount. Really, all these rookie running backs have been falling. Like Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, Bucky Irving, which is typically what you see after the NFL draft and early on in the summer. And we talked about this back then. Everybody's thinking about rookies. Everybody's thinking about weeks 15, 16, 17. And as you get closer to the start of the season, more people are thinking about median projections. And you see some of the rookies fall and the veterans rise. So, like I said, I haven't drafted much Jalen Wright whatsoever. He's running back 3. He's by far and away the most expensive running back 3 on any depth chart at the moment. I did like him as a prospect, though. It's a very good offense to be a part of. It's not like I'm in love with Achane from a volume perspective. Raheem Mostert's going to be 32 years old this season. Jalen Wright here falls to us. What was his ADP? It was in the 140s. I'm sorry, 157. 173 minus 157. That should be 16. So you get Jalen Wright 16 picks past ADP. So we'll go ahead and we will take him. But this is definitely going to be a player that his ADP continues to fall, right? So we get him 16 picks past ADP. But in reality, for where his new ADP is probably going to be in like a week, it's not like we're getting some massive value. I guess it says Quinton Johnston had a 600-yard and 4.5 receiving touchdown projection on Underdog. Yeah, so if you think Quinton Johnston is just the absolute worst receiver ever and is not going to have a role in this offense, you can go take lower than 4.5 receiving touchdowns if you wanted. It's on Underdog right now if you're interested. And yes, if you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this live stream. Arm cover says, hey, Mason, did you see Chubb squat 600 pounds? I actually talked about this in the live stream. But yes, I've drafted a lot of Chubb, specifically in the tournament style contest where all of the field is incentivized to maximize upside in weeks 15, 16, 17. Is I think Chubb's a very interesting pick if you look at like Best Ball Mania or Puppy style contest, just because the production that he should have this next season is going to be back halved, where he should have a lower advance rate overall. So he should be a more unique player in the playoff tournament. However, have an insanely high ceiling for weeks 15, 16, 17. So in like Best Ball Mania and the Puppy tournament, I'm actually drafting a considerable amount of Chubb. However, in like the Eliminator and the Marathon, I'm taking 0 Chubb. So I'm very encouraged by seeing it. Okay. Demonic Seller says, Yo, Mason, curious how heavy you are in the Eliminator. I've drafted a decent amount in the Eliminator. I can pull up some exact numbers for you soon. But what quarterbacks are in play for us? We already talked about Russ for sure being in play. Outside of Russ, I guess we can go McCarthy. We go running back here with Khalil Herbert as our RB6. We end this draft with Russ and McCarthy. Get Russ double stacked with Pickens and Warren. Get McCarthy paired up with Jefferson. And then we have the Mahomes points to get us through the season. Okay, let's see. Naeem says, Mason, are you down for a bike live stream? I've thought about this a ton. Trust me, I think about this literally every single day. If I could live stream on the bike, my life would be so much easier. If I could combine the time that I have to spend on that bike and the live streams, I would love it. I would be in way better shape. And the thing about being on the bike, I love more than anything talking on the phone when I'm on the bike, because it just makes time go so fast. And whenever I'm in these live streams, time goes incredibly fast as well. So it'd make the bike go so much faster. And I could do way more of it. So we're going to go ahead. We'll take Russ here as our QB2. And like I said, when you go Mahomes, more likely than not, you're only going to take 2 quarterbacks. The only instance in which I'm taking 3 is really if you wait till like round 17 to take your second. But let me show you this team real quick, because we are probably going to be bouncing to the other draft very soon. So honestly, I really like this team. The only thing that is regrettable is it would have been obviously really nice to get either Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice making it back to us at 68 for the Mahomes stack. Sadly, neither guy falls. It is what it is. We can't sit here and cry about it. But yeah, I have no idea how many likes we're at, but I'm having a ton of fun in these drafts. So I just want to get in another draft. I wasn't able to draft yesterday, so I want to do more. So we're going to hop in another fast puppy draft, ladies and gentlemen. If this thing will load, we'll see. Okay, we are in. Let's go. Bean Salad asking what our Quinton Johnston percentage is. I'll pull this up, but it's probably going to be embarrassing. Like I said, I've made countless videos all offseason talking about the historical data and how Quinton Johnston is most likely a bum. History says he is done. I would not recommend anybody to be drafting Quinton Johnston. But specifically in underdog drafts, I find myself getting suckered into him for whatever reason. When he's wide receiver 73, I'm sitting there going, yeah, he's most likely nothing with how bad he was last season. But the situation's good enough where I don't particularly care too much. And I will go ahead and I'll just pull the trigger. But let me pull up. It's an embarrassing amount. I'm going to let you know that right now. Johnston. I have 15% Quinton Johnston. If you just look at all the Johnsons I have 15% Quinton Johnston, 13% Roschon Johnson, 7% Jawan Johnson. And I had a lot of Deontay. I was up close to 20% of Deontay at one point. But now that he is just much more expensive, I've cooled down to where I'm only at 7% Deontay Johnson. But we just finished that other draft and we took McCarthy in the last round. Okay. Cade says he just got CMC at 3. That is nuts. Thomas in here with us at pick 9. We're going to get Chase at 4. There's been some conversation this week surrounding the Burrow injury. And obviously, if Burrow's not at 100%, I mean, Chase is just completely done skis. Augustus says got 25% in Johnston. He'll prevail. We'll see, my friend. I mean, here's my thought process with Johnston. I talked about this like an hour-long pod for the YouTube members and the members of flockfantasy.com. In the past with Quinton Johnston, here's what people would have said. And I've been playing, specifically Dynasty Fantasy Football. I've been playing in like 20-plus leagues year-round Dynasty Fantasy Football since 2014, so the past 10 years. You go back to like the Laquan Treadwell year. You go back to really any of these seasons where you just see a flat-out round 1 guy fall flat on his face. Biggest bust ever. Josh Dotson, Laquan Treadwell, it doesn't matter. What people say, he was only 21 years old. He just needed time. He's going to get better going into year 2. And what has historically happened is that bust maybe falls about equivalent to what like JSN has. Like where JSN's going at like in the wide receiver 40-ish range. The thing with Quinton Johnston, and if you were buying low on that guy in year 2, historically speaking, you just got crushed. Buying low on the round one disappointing receivers going into year two has been the worst draft strategy you could possibly implement over the past 10 seasons. But people have learned from that. I want to say people have learned from those mistakes. And now, instead of people hyping up Quinton Johnston and saying he just needed time, he's going to be better, blah, 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 Quinton Johnston's now going in the wide receiver 70s. People understand, yeah, he's bad. He is most likely bad. He is priced to be horrible. In years past, he probably would have been priced as if he had a shot. Now he's being priced as if he has no chance. So in years past, it would have been a very wise thing, and it would have been the very smart thing to draft literally 0% Quinton Johnston. But now, when I think in this last draft, we got him at like wide receiver 73, I'm like, yeah, he's probably very bad, but all the wide receivers here are probably very bad, you know? So it's like, oh, Wando Robinson or Quinton Johnston. Who cares? They're both probably bums. Give me the guy that's at least attached to Justin Herbert, that has a wide open depth chart, and maybe we can see a world where he's only 21 years old last season, so he didn't get it done. But now when we start wide receiver at the gate, typically I'm looking to go Kyren Williams, but specifically whenever you see Achane fall to 28, I think that it's just going to be a unique pairing if you look at the way the ADPs line up of Chase, Debo, Achane. I think that there are going to be a lot more Chase, Debo, Kyren teams in this tournament. So we'll go Achane over Kyren in this instance. I have Kyren ranked straight up over Achane. I've drafted a lot more Kyren Williams than I have drafted Devon Achane. But just from a uniqueness perspective in the tournament and balancing out some exposures, I think it does make sense to go Achane here in round 3. Okay. Let's see. Naeem says, Adam Thielen is a great year last year and Price is the same area as Quinton Johnston with a better schedule as well. What does that say? A couple different things, my friend. If we want to look at this example, there are two things we can look at. One, we can look at the exact example that you brought up with Adam Thielen. And the big difference between Adam Thielen is they take a wide receiver round 1, they go and they trade for Deontay Johnson, and he is in a completely different situation where he has significant talent added to his roster. Whereas I would make the argument that Quinton Johnston has significant talent leaving his own roster. So if we want to look at those exact players that are being talked about in this instance, if we want to look at Thielen and if we want to look at Johnston, there's a difference there. There's also the thing that Adam Thielen's going into his age 34 season. Quinton Johnston's going into his age 22 season. But honestly, I don't even want to focus in on those two players exactly because I think that's less of an exciting discussion as what you're referring to when it comes to the schedule of these receivers. Because we can sit here and we can go, oh, okay, these defenses are worse. These defenses are better. But what is way more useful in my mind, we're going to go to Hurts. What is way more useful is if instead of trying to look at, oh, this is an easy schedule, this is a hard schedule, you can look at every line, every over-under that Vegas has this next season for NFL teams. Every single one. You can draw the exact point projections from the best odd makers on this planet and how many total points these offenses are going to be scoring. So instead of sitting here going, the Carolina Panthers have a better schedule than the Los Angeles Chargers, instead of looking at the schedule at all, what I would way rather look at is the total projected points that you have from Las Vegas sportsbooks. Because that will, of these sportsbooks, every single week are taking into account the matchup. They're taking into account every single week the schedule that this team has. So instead of us sitting here and trying to draw hypotheticals of, no, the Panthers have an easier schedule versus the Chargers, and we can say this about any teams, what I would way rather say is, oh, okay, Vegas sportsbooks are projecting out right now the Chargers to score about 22.5 points per game, and the Panthers about 18 points per game. And I'm pulling those numbers out of my butt right now. It's just that I can get you the exact numbers if you're very interested in it. But I don't think the strength of schedule conversation is too useful. I don't want to say it's not useful, but it's so much more useful in my mind to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture would just be the strength of schedule accounted for in the total points projections from a week-to-week perspective for these offenses. So we'll go ahead. We'll take McBride. Very similar build to what we had in the last draft, right? Where we get our elite quarterback, we get our elite tight end. Y'all know I do this pretty much in every single draft. At least I try to. But the difference is instead of going Mahomes, Kittle, we go Hurts, McBride. With Jalen Hurts, we can still definitely target a stack in Dallas Goedert later on. So what we're going to want to do is we are not going to want to take a tight ends until Goddard's available to us. We may whiff on Goddard. We'll see if we can get him. He will be a target for us. So I'm probably not taking Kittle at 69 if he were to make it. If Kittle makes it something crazy to like 76, I think Kittle's a great pick, especially considering the fact that we have Debo, so we can just kind of double down that Aiyuk gets dealt. And if Aiyuk gets dealt, then all of a sudden we are absolutely crushing in this draft. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so Stroud goes 61. Good for us to see Stroud off the board, obviously, when we have no Texans. Jeep guy, appreciate you, my guy. Now, Kamara off the board at pick 59. So, yeah, that team at 11 goes Jacobs 35, Etienne at 38, Kamara at 59. So, they're just going ahead and getting their guys. They're fine with it. Okay. Smooth this around. Pitts goes 67. We talked about this exact instance of Kittle making it to us here. And because of the exact situation that we're in, where we can only take one more tight end in this draft because we have McBride, and at the same time, we have an unstacked Jalen Hurts, so more likely than not, we want to target Dallas Goedert later on. Even though I love Kittle at this price, even though Kittle would correlate with Debo for us, I think it probably makes more sense to just go ahead, take the wide receiver here at 69, and let ourselves have Goddard, hopefully get Goddard later on. It's not like I'm going to be reaching significantly on Goddard. I'm not taking Goddard round 7. I'm not taking Goddard round 8, but we'll see. Okay. Cade says, I find myself struggling when trying to decide between DK and Cup. I feel like both guys are gross with where they go, so typically I just want to go with Kyron. I want to go Kyron or Achane if Achane does fall. Okay, Evan Ingram goes 74. Brian Thomas goes. I really did want Brian Thomas. Ah, dear God. We're going to reach here. We're going to take Keon Coleman. Did not like Keon as a prospect, but I think for the situation that he is in, he is probably going to be one of my most drafted wide receivers going in round 7. If he continues to go in round 7, I am just going to take an absurd amount of Keon Coleman. Dalton says JSN season. My thing with JSN is he could be the wide receiver 3 for Geno Smith. Keon Coleman could be the wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen. And while both guys have presumed upside, neither player has shown for sure that they are some massive talent at the NFL level. It's definitely a possibility, but we can't say so for sure. Here for the meme says, what's the most you'd pay for Walker in a single quarterback PPR format? In terms of rookie picks, obviously rookie picks in a 1 quarterback league is going to be worth less than a super flex. Probably a second and a third. I just don't know if this is the time period that I want to be trading for running backs in July. Definitely better than trading for them in March, of course. Yes. It is Breece Hall season, my friend. Obviously, Breece Hall was great last year, but I don't know. I think Breece Hall is just set up to crush. Another year removed from the torn ACL, significantly better quarterback play, investments into the offensive line by the Jets. You have 3 major catalysts for a running back that's already proven that he is an elite level talent at the NFL level. So I personally have Breece at RB2 ahead of Bijan. Bijan has some pretty major catalysts as well. Coaching staff change, quarterback change. We are going to take Swift here at 93. But Bijan hasn't, I believe Bijan is an elite level running back at the NFL level. I'm sorry, an elite level RB for the NFL. Hook 'em horns. Of course I'm rooting for our guy. But we can't sit here and pretend that Bijan has shown the same talent level of Breece Hall at the NFL. It has not happened. Which I'm completely fine going through and drafting Bijan with where he's at. But the thing is, if you look at how their offenses project this next season, there's not a big gap between the two. It's not like the Falcons are supposed to be a much better offense than what you have with the Jets. And it's not like Bijan's the only running back between the two. Situation has gotten significantly better. I think you could make an argument that Breece's situation, the delta between the situation that they were in a year ago versus today, is even larger than Bijan's. So I'm all in for Breece. Okay. Naeem says it's not needed for Bijan to be a bell cow like Breece. What do you mean by that, my friend? I have no idea what that means. Are you saying that for the same amount of touches, Bijan Robinson outscores Breece Hall? I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just wanting to know how you come to that conclusion. We are probably going to take Lockett here at pick 100. Very boring pick, but it is what it is. I'd probably like Bowers more than Lockett with this selection. But as we were talking about previously, whenever we are sitting here with an unstacked Jalen Hurts, we definitely want to be setting ourselves up to be able to go Goddard later on. And because we took McBride at 52, we can't take Bowers here and then Dallas Goedert. We only can get one more tight end. Master says, Falcons have 3 weapons, though, and a younger, albeit still old veteran with Penix. Jets with Rodgers is riskier. Let me pull this up because it's a very interesting discussion. And I mean, it's something that I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Like, I've drafted a lot more Breece Hall than I have Bijan Robinson. Okay. Let me go ahead, pull this up. Right now, this next season, the Jets are projected out, and this is from Las Vegas Sportsbooks. I'd make an argument that these are the best sources you can find for 23.69 points per game, the 13th best offense in the NFL. The Falcons are projected for 23.6 points per game, the 14th best offense in the NFL. Current Vegas Sportsbooks have the Jets and the Falcons as about the same from an offensive output perspective this next season. The Jets were a worse offense than the Falcons last year. So the Jets are currently projected to improve more than the Falcons are, at least from a year-to-year perspective. You have Breece Hall another year healthy. Whereas if you look at Bijan, the catalysts are you have the coaching staff change and the quarterback change, which should fuel the overall offense to be significantly more efficient, productive, more trips to the red zone, more touchdown opportunities for Bijan Robinson. But at the same time, Breece Hall has his offense projected to improve even more. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, it's not something that we can sit here and say like, oh, anybody who thinks it's Bijan over Breece doesn't know what they're talking about. No, I mean, very smart people think that. But it's just personally, I would rather have Breece Hall for those reasons. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and take Dallas Goedert. And yeah, this is the entire reason, right? Where we didn't go Bowers earlier. We didn't go Kittle earlier. Like, I'd way rather have Kittle over Hopkins, especially on a team where we have Debo. But specifically when we have Jalen Hurts here, we need to set ourselves up with the Philly stack. So now we are only going to go quarterback, running back, receiver. Looking at quarterbacks coming up, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert are both here available to us. If we look at our options at receiver, we have Chase, Debo, Hopkins, Keon, Lockett. Really none of those stacking options make sense. If we are mapping out quarterbacks that can make sense later on, this may be a very similar build to what we had in the last draft. This may be a team where we go with an elite quarterback and elite tight end, still draft 3 quarterbacks because we wait to take our second quarterback to like round 16. We could end up going like with Will Levis and Geno Smith. Or we'll see what we do here. Mike Williams goes 122. Running back, wide receiver, it's all in play. I may make a pretty surprising pick for y'all here, but I don't care too much. Does he have any shot to make it back to us at 141? Probably not. He's probably not making it back. Actually, we'll see. We'll roll the dice. We'll go Blake Corum here, 124, and we'll see if we can get our guy to fall to us. I'm sorry, we're going to go Dontavian Wicks. I apologize. Blake Corum goes 1 pick before us. I was expecting Wicks to go off the board before we made our selection. And then I was thinking that we'd be in a spot where we are forced to take 80 Mitchell, and I was going to go ahead and reach on my next guy over Mitchell. Chubb goes 130. Chubb was going to be the guy that we reached on. I should have just done it. I should have done it. Because Chubb's going to rise. I think Chubb's going to end up having an ADP in round 10. I already have a lot of Chubb, but this is like the exact perfect tournament that you want. It's a $5 buy-in, $200,000 first place, right? Squirrel says, anyone else have a good fantasy memory of Kenyon Drake? Kenyon Drake had one solid season. Obviously, Drake had way more disappointing seasons than solid seasons. I think that's almost undeniable. Okay. Let's move this over. Goff goes, we are quarterback, running back, receiver from here on out. Maybe a team where we can still take 6 running backs if we want, having Achane and Swift. I know a lot of people would go 5. If we were to go Herbert here, we could go Quinton Johnston later on. I don't know how excited we are for that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Sticky Ricky here at 141, specifically because this is a team that took Deebo Samuel. And if we're trying to chase upside and we're trying to chase the best end outcome, like I said, $5 buy-in, $200,000 first place prize. We could say, oh, okay. What happens if Aiyuk gets dealt? Then both these guys get steamed up dramatically in drafts and expectations. And we hit on both of them based off one Aiyuk trade. So with that possibility, we're going to reach on Sticky. And for this one team in particular, we will be rooting that Aiyuk gets dealt. Don't care where he goes. But would be a massive boom for both those spots. And I think we're more likely than not going to be taking another receiver anytime soon. If we were going to take another receiver in this draft, we're only taking one more. Stafford goes. I think we'll take Kendre Miller here at 148 as our third running back. The real question is, when do we take our next quarterback? Are we only taking 2 QBs? Are we only taking 5 RBs? Do we need to get up to 8 receivers? Wide receiver currently, we have Chase, Deebo, Hopkins, Keon Coleman, Tyler Lockett, Dontavian Wicks, Sticky Ricky. I think this could potentially be a spot where we're only going to take 7. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Now, more tight ends go. Tight ends going off the board is phenomenal for us. NL Soul says, I have a confession for the flock. When Jefferson first broke out, I got him off the waivers in my keeper league. Oh, dear gosh, my friend. Oh, dear gosh. But then traded him for Joshua Kelly. Can we spam the chat some L's here for NL Souls? I'm happy that you've been able to come out and get to the acceptance point of your progress. I mean, this happened back in 2020, I'm assuming. So 4 years later, we're finally to the acceptance stage. Hoping that you're able to get through it, my friend. I have some... We can go through my absolute worst fantasy football calls ever if y'all want to hit the highlights for me. I mean, I'm sure y'all remember a lot of them. Do we go Ray Davis or Geno? We're going to go Ray Davis. We'll go Ray Davis RB4 because looking at the teams after us, this team has Caleb and Stafford. This team has Lawrence and Baker. This team has Lamar and Herbert. I don't know how much of a threat it is that we don't get Geno on the way back around, but we'll see. And obviously we'd want Geno because we have Lockett. But Lance, obviously, horrible call. My take with Trey Lance is if you looked through history, no quarterback that had been selected inside the top 3 picks of the NFL draft was not given at least 16 games as a starting QB. It had never happened. And I was sitting here going, no idea if Lance is any good or not, but he can run the ball and he's in the best situation in the NFL. And if you look at where Jaden Daniels goes in drafts right now, if you look at where Anthony Richardson goes in drafts right now, guys that we don't know if they're that good, but we know they run the ball like crazy. I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, Trey Lance is just like that, but in a better situation. I'm draft the hell out of him. So Lance, big whiff. The Lance whiff wasn't, I stand by it. The Lance call was such a good call. From a process perspective, how were we supposed to know that Mr. Irrelevant was going to come out and do what he did? So I stand by the Lance call. It was the correct one, just to let you know. Now, some of the really bad calls that I've had. We're going to go back to my first horrible call. Horrible. And then really quick, I'm not sitting here with the opinion now that, Trey Lance is still good and he needs another shot. At this point, once Lance gets traded for a day 3 pick, it's over. It's done. There's no hope left. If he gets a starting job, I think we'll be in on him in fantasy just because of the rushing upside, but it's not like we're sitting here thinking that Trey Lance is a ton of NFL talent. I don't want to say the worst call. I think the worst call is maybe Puka. But the first very bad call that I had was back in 2019. This was the year that everybody was in on a Chris Godwin breakout. Godwin was going into year 3. He had never finished higher than, I think, a wide receiver 4 or 5 in fantasy. However, he was being drafted as like the wide receiver 18. And everybody and their mom was screaming that he was going to be this year's breakout. He was every fantasy analyst's favorite player. I was sitting here going, hey, looks good. I don't know if I think maybe the hype's over warranted. I'm not drafting him at all. And Chris Godwin proceeded to be the league winner that everybody and their mom saw coming. And it was the wide receiver 2 from a points per game perspective when Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions and led the NFL in passing. That was the first big whiff we had. The Lance whiff, the Godwin whiff's embarrassing. That was bad process, embarrassing on my part. The Lance one, I don't care about. I stand by it. I think the process was there. Then I did not see Kyron Puka Laporta coming last season. And because I did not see Kyron Laporta Puka coming, I did not come close to winning any tournaments because those were the guys that you needed. What are we doing here? What are we doing, Mason? Come on, get with it. We're going to panic pick Jalen McMillan. The panic pick of McMillan here does lock in the fact that we're only going to take 2 quarterbacks because I think I'd rather have 2 more running backs. Yeah, I was going down memory lane. That was not a great call. Let me see if we have any historical horrible calls. Frank says he had Puka in like 15% of drafts last year. I wish. I had Puka in 0%. I don't think I drafted Puka a single time. I don't think I drafted Kyren Williams a single time. I drafted over 400 teams last year and took 0 of them. And good luck trying to do anything. And they both break out and are coming from round 18 and true league winners. And I thought it was crazy that so many people were excited about Puka. Like, I thought Puka had no shot. And not only did he have a shot, but he proceeded to be the best rookie wide receiver of all time. Nuts. Nate says, if you were a Puka Kyren drafter, you are a god. I daydream, and I mean I daydream more than anything in the world. Here, real quick, let me show you my team. We're just going to draft one more running back after this. I daydream more than anything, being able to get in a time machine and just go back to last like May and tell myself, hey, by the way, Kyren Williams is about to be a top 3 running back, and Puka is going to be the best rookie wide receiver of all time. If I could have known that, if I could have had that information, just imagine you knew that. How much money you could have made in these drafts. It's absurd to think about. It's sad to think about. Because instead, early in the offseason, I could have been using round 18 picks on Kyren, could have been using round 18 picks on Puka, but I was using them on Trey Lance instead. But anyway, thank you, NL Souls, for inspiring us to go down this memory lane. We'll call it the memory lane of shame. I think that's the best way to put it. But we're about to take our last running back here, 213. We'll call it a day. Really do appreciate you hanging out with me. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for everything. And yeah, I'll be live tomorrow night. Should be live pretty much every single night till the start of the season, doing these underdog drafts. Of course, you can find that link anywhere if you want to join with me. I would love it if you did. If you don't, all good. I appreciate you spending your Friday night with me, and I really hope I get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow.